All right, this is Parshat Tetzaveh. Who would like to get us started reading? Jesse, could you start us off?
Sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Ve'ata Tetzaveh et bnei Yisrael ve'yikhu elecha shemen zayit zach
Mhm.
katit lamor lamaor
Good.
lecha alot ner tamid.
Very good. Ve'ata tetzaveh et bnei Yisrael v'yikhu elecha shemen zayit zach katit lamaor leha'alot ner tamid. All right, there is the word after which this parasha is named. Tetzaveh, you shall command. We know you are the subject because of the tav at the front. The root is, well, tzadi, vav, and, well, this is actually a vowel. We can't see the third root letter. It's a yod. All the verbs that have a yod as the third root letter, they're a entire category of verbs where they behave the same way in general. And so once you start getting into intermediate Hebrew, you start studying verbs like that more and more. In the Yiktol, those verbs have in the Yiktol, they have a hey at the end, and in the Katal, they sometimes have a hey at the end. This is the same root as mitzvah or mitzvot, which is the noun. Ve'ata, and you, tetzaveh, shall command et bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. Ve'yikchu. What's the root of ve'yikchu? The vav looks like and, yod at the front, ooh at the end. Looks like we have a root letter missing. What's the root?
Lakach.
Good. Yeah. So this is a weak root. We have a letter missing right there at the front. It's from lakach. So they will take is maybe how it should be translated. Elecha, to you. But in English, it sounds better to say you bring something to you rather than take something to you. Well, Shemen zait zach, katit lamaor. So shemen is a pretty well-known word, either oil or fat. Zait is also pretty well known. It's an olive. Zach is not so well known. Um, it's an adjective describing the purity of the oil. Katit is going to be kind of a descriptor talking about the oil, that it is beaten. Well, what does the temple service need all of this oil for anyway? La ma'or. We can tell that this is both for because of the dagesh and patach. So it's like saying le ha, but instead it turns into la. For the ma'or. Well, the mem is just part of the um, structure of the word. The root is or, light. This is causing light, something that causes light, a luminary or illumination. So for the illuminations, for the lamps that are going to be in the tabernacle, in the temple. Leha'alot. And what's the root of this word? Hint, it has nothing to do with burning. We can tell that this is an infinitive construct, that is to do something. It's an infinitive construct because of the lamed at the front.
To go up.
Right, exactly. The root is ein, lamed, Something's missing. Yod. So this is another example of a missing yod, Ein Lamed Yod, just like this one was. The hey at the front here tells us it's causative. He feel. He feel verbs in general are causative, cause something to happen. So causing something to go up. Causing what to go up? The lamp. What does it mean to cause a lamp to go up? Aha, now we're getting into the real question. So this is supposed to be figurative for causing the flame on top to go up.
Fire?
So you're exactly, it is fire that the lamp uses in order to illuminate inside of the tabernacle. So literally it's causing something to go up on the lamp, but what's the intention here is igniting it, lighting it. What kind of a lamp? Tamid. Tamid has to do with perpetuity, so always, the never ending, never extinguished, the always lamp. This isn't necessarily causing fire on the lamp always, but rather, at least in Jewish tradition, the ner tamid is the light that is constantly burning. Or actually, I guess in Judaism it would be called the esh tamid, the ever existing fire, but comes from this idea. All right, comments, questions on this before we move on? Ooh, that's a long one. Would somebody else like to read this one? Thomas, do you want to read?
באוהל מועד מחוץ, also okay, the first is pronounced מחוץ לפרחת אשר על העדות יעדוך אותו אהרון, אהרון ובניו מערב עד בוקר לפני אדוני תוקת עולם לדורותם מאת בני Israel.
Very good. I made a note next to some things that you missed, and as I read through it, keep an eye on those. באוהל מועד מחוץ לפרוכת.
Nee, doch nicht. Oh.
מחוץ לפרוכת אשר על העדות יערוך אותו אהרון ובניו מערב עד בוקר לפני אדוני חוקת עולם לדורותם מאת בני ישראל. All right, what do we have here? Ba'ohel, in the tent of Moed. Think of the Moadim, the holidays, the meeting times is probably the best way to describe this. A vad is a meeting, spelled with a vav. So a moed is the meeting itself. So when we think of the moadim, it's not necessarily holidays, which connotes like festivity. The word for that would be chagim. This is appointed times appointed for meeting together, like Passover and Shavuot and Sukkot and things like that. Michutz la parochet. The parochet is the veil inside of the tabernacle, the one that is, torn in half in the New Testament at the earthquake in the Second Temple. Let's see, Ohel Moed michutz leparochet, on the outside of that veil. What veil? Asher al ha'edut. which is, it says al, but concerning about the edut. What's the edut? It's the testimony, as in the Ten Commandments, the testimony that Moses received from God. Ya'aroch oto Aharon uvanav. He shall, it uses the word tend, but the root here is arach, to arrange something. So he shall arrange or see to it. Aharon uvanav, Aaron and his sons. Me'erev, this is going to be from right here, from the word min, but there's compensatory lengthening rather than the nun assimilating into the first root letter because there's a guttural, right? It does the same thing right here. Instead of me with a dagesh, because it comes from the word min, rather, if we can't put a dagesh in the next letter, it just lengthens the preceding vowel me, but it still means min. It still means from. So me erev, from the evening, ad boker, until the morning, lifnei, to or before the face of, before Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the Lord. Chokat olam. Now a chuk or a chok, we think of a chok as being something like a statute or some sort of commandment or law, but it has to do with something that is consistently, how do I say that? That is consistently applicable, maybe. So here it's using that root chokat, some sort of a statute, something that's regular, leolam. So you're going to do it continually. Ledorotam, to their, there's your 3MP, to their dorot. Dor is a generation. Dorot is the irregular plural. It looks like a feminine, right? Ot. Well, it's an irregular. Dor, dorot. It's masculine. Me'et, literally from, with. Here they translate it as on the behalf of Bnei Yisrael. Me'et probably means that they're going to be receiving the supplies in order to do this from Israel. But here you can see the translation says that they're doing it on behalf of Israel. Well, which one's the better translation? That's a good question. Would someone else like to read? If not, Jesse, would you like to read again?
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Ve'ata hakrev elecha et acharon ahicha ve'et banav ito mitioch.
Okay, so this right here is actually a cantillation mark. It looks like a comma with a chirik, but it's not a vowel.
It's not.
There's your vowel.
Mitoch b'nei Yisrael lecha ano li acharon nadav ve'avihu eleazar ve'itamar b'nei Aharon.
Good. Excellent reading. Ve'ata hakrev elecha et Aharon achicha ve'et banav ito mitoch bnei Yisrael לכהנו לי אהרון, נדב ואביהו, אלעזר ואיתמר, בני אהרון. All right, so the second part of this verse is just a list of Aaron and his sons. There's Aaron, there's Nadav and Avihu. These are the guys that are going to lose their life because they're going to bring strange fire into the tabernacle. There's Elazar and Itamar. The sons of Aaron. The first part sounds kind of funny. Ve'ata, and you, hakrev. Okay, so this is supposed to be God speaking to Moses. So you, Moses, hakrev. What is this word? Never mind what's written underneath it. What is it? The roof is kuf resh bet, which has to do with close. The hey and the vowels indicate that this is he feel causative. So cause someone to be close. Cause someone to be close, elecha, to you, et Aharon. Cause Aaron and Aaron, your brother, and his sons with him to be close to you. Now, why am I bringing this up? Why is this weird? Well, because hakrev is also the word for sacrifice. Like when it says you will sacrifice this animal for this particular reason, it will use the same verb. So it sounds funny to the Hebrew ear, and you shall sacrifice unto yourself Aaron and his sons. Now, it could, just to clarify, this causing to be close doesn't always mean sacrifice. If I'm causing someone to come here, hey, you come here, I just hakreved that person to come close to me. So that's obviously what's going on here, because Moses didn't put his brother or his brother's sons on the altar. But just the ability to midrash from this, the idea that the ones who bring forth the sacrifices are being brought forth as using the same word as a sacrifice would, that's probably more than just irony. There's probably something there. Achicha, usually when we see words like this, where there's a yod in front of the cha, that usually indicates that we're looking at a plural. Right? If I had susim and I wanted to say it belongs to you, it would become suse plus cha. Susecha, whether it's a tsere or a segol, probably doesn't matter, but susecha means your horses. That yod tells us that it's plural. Is achicha plural? So where'd the yod come from? Why is there a yod then? Truth be told, the root of ach probably originally included a yod or a vav here. So the yod that you're seeing is probably a remnant of its original root. It's not the first time that we've seen yods go missing, is it? All those lamed yod, final yod verbs, the yod goes missing. Well, it went missing on this one too, but here it comes back when you add a suffix. Av is another example. Av is father, but if it's your father, it becomes avicha, because the root was probably originally abu and then turns into avi, and then that's what we see when you add a suffix, avicha. Let's see, mitoch. We don't really think about this word toch very much. We get to see it in words like betoch, in the midst of, or here it's mitoch, from among or from the midst of. And there's that mem chirik dagesh, so we know that it's min toch, mitoch. But the root is tav, vav, kaf, to be in the middle or midst of something. It's an actual noun in Hebrew. This is a noun. It's the middle or midst of something, from the root tav, vav, kaf, to be in the middle of something. All right, any questions before we move on? Ooh, a little short one. Who wants a short little verse?
I'll try.
Go right ahead.
Va yome.
There's the ve with the shva under it. And then this is going to be a, ve,
A ve a i in to
This last syllable is a tav with a kamatz a. Ta.
ta
Ve'asita.
ta
Ve'asita. Go ahead.
sita vaga vaga
Okay, we got
da ya
vigde. Did you say
de
vigde?
de
Yeah, this is vig and this is de. Vigde.
de gatos.
There's an O vowel up on top here, so it's kodesh.
Oh, kodesh.
Mhm.
Kodesh. Okay. Aharon.
That's right. Le'aharon.
Oh, le haron.
The way I divide up syllables is I will include a schwa, excuse me, an audible schwa. I'll include that with the next syllable. Some people like to divide it separately like this, le, aha, and
Aha
so this would be le
haron.
aharon.
Ah,
Mhm.
ah, forgot what was that.
Now there is a reading cheat sheet on the bottom here. So this is ah,
Ah,
this is chi. Actually, it's right here, I guess. And then the last one is cha. Achicha. Achicha.
hija, ahija,
Mhm.
la kavod,
That's right. Lechavod. Lechavod.
kavod.
Now this one's a monstrosity. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4 syllables. So just break it up.
Volo to pe ah ro.
Boy, this is hard. I'm trying to pick out all the letters on the bottom. Okay, so here we've got oo, long oo sound. Latif.
Beef.
Latif. Ah,
Ah,
ret.
ret.
Oo, latif.
Reti.
Aret.
Da, ret.
The stress is going to be on this syllable because of that symbol right there. Oo, latif. Aret. All right, I'll read through it one time. Ve'asita vigde kodesh לאהרון אחיך לכבוד ולתפארת. All right, the first verb here is special because it shows us all three root letters. The ta at the end is a verbal suffix. The vav at the beginning is a It's the prefix and, but it also changes the tense of the verb. Talk about that in a second. But look, ein sin yod. These final yod verbs usually hide their yod. Here it appears. What's the meaning of the tav at the end of this verse?
It's feminine.
It's not feminine. This is the second, this is the you masculine suffix. This says you did something. So if you, a man, walked, it would be halachta. If you, a man, guarded, it would be shamarta. Here, the root is ein sin yod, so it's asita. You can see the yod changes this to an e instead of a sound. Asita, you did. Wait a second, but it's translating it, and you shall do or make. What happened? The vav at the front. The vav at the front, exactly. The vav at the front is a vekatal vav. Now, vekatal is a word that we use to describe an entire class of verbs. They are verbs that have a katal suffix, like this one. But the ve at the front flips the tense. Katal is usually some sort of completed action or past tense. Adding a vav to it flips it.
Okay.
So it's translated, and you shall do or make. There are essentially four different verbal, how do I say this? I don't want to say forms. Let's see. Let's start it out this way. There are essentially two tenses in Hebrew. They're not even tenses. They're called aspects. The first one is katal, and the second one is yiktol. Now, just to be fair, these represent a few different categories of, how do I say this, of verbs. Like, for example, katal also includes something called katel and katol. Maybe some of you have never heard of this before. Katal, we might use the word shamar, and the a vowel pattern is this a vowel pattern in the name katal. The kuf, the tet, and the lamed, the q, the t, the l, they're just arbitrary letters. It's the vowels we're concerned about. Shamar. That's a good example. Katel and katol are also katal forms, but for state of being verbs. They are a little bit less frequent in the Bible. So think of words like karev. We just saw that root earlier. Its katal form has a tzere there. It's not karav, it's karev. Why? It's a state of being verb. Karev, he was close. A state of being is something that you are, not something that you do. You are close. There's also katol, such as katon. You are small. You are insignificant. You are little. Katon. Or actually, it's he was. He was small. He was insignificant. He was little. Anyway, and then over on the Yiktol side, turns out that there are actually two groups. Yiktol is the one. Maybe you guys know the other one. It's called Yiktal. And there are basically two reasons why this O vowel will turn into an ah. Reason number one, gutturals. If a guttural shows up in position 2 or 3 of the root, it will take an ah sound. So let's get an example like shin mem ayin. Ayin is a guttural. So if I want to say he will do the action of shema, what will it look like? Will it be yishmoa? No. There's an ayin. It's going to take a patach. Regular yiktol form expects to have an o vowel, as in yishmor. But it will become an ah if there's a guttural. Furthermore, it will take an ah if it is a state of being verb. So let's take this example over here. Karev, how would it look in the yiktol? He will be close. going to take a patach. Yik rav. All right, so now that we've seen the various ways that katal and yiktol can actually appear, what do they mean? Well, katal verbs are typically going to be your completed actions, and yiktol your incompleted actions. But why don't we just call this past tense and this one future tense? Well, Hebrew actually doesn't care about when something took place. It cares more about whether the action is completed relative to the last thing that was said or in the mind of the speaker. So completed actions and incompleted actions could actually encompass multiple English tenses. If it's something that the speaker not feels, I don't want to use the word feels. If it's something that the speaker anticipates to be completed, either because it happened in the past or because he's looking forward to a point at which he can look back and see that it's completed, that would be katal. And pretty much everything else would be yiktol. Here we see ve'asita, that vav at the front flips the tense. So katal verbs are completed, but as soon as you add a ve to the front, all of a sudden you change it to an incompleted. Ve-katal verbs are incompleted. They still take suffixes like katal verbs do, like katalti, I did something, or katalta, you did something. But there's a ve at the front that flips the tense. Ve-katalti, ve-katalta, ve-katalnu. There's also a tense that can be flipped from the yiktol into the completed tense, and this is the vayiktol. This is going to take a yiktol verb like this, but then add a vai to the front of it, and it changes it to a completed tense. Usually, and in fact, the vast majority of the time, this completed tense is a narrative past tense. Narrative, what does that mean? It means you're telling a story, and vayiktol tells you what happens next in the story. And then he did this, and then he did that. It's like a, Little Red Riding Hood or something. And then she went into the woods, and then she saw the big bad wolf, and then each one of those, and then she did something would be a vayiktol. Vekatal, on the other hand, is a lot more versatile. It can actually take on a host of different meanings. Usually it inherits its meaning from the context or from the preceding verb. Like, for example, if a yiktol follows a vekatal, then it's just going to be some sort of incompleted action, no big deal. If a vekatal follows an imperative, hey, do it, then the vekatal is kind of like adding on to the command. I do this, and do that, and do that, and do that. The and do that might be a vekatal. Let's see, any other, let's make sure I'm not leaving anything out. I think that's good. Any questions on verb tenses before I move on from here?
I have a question just regarding the sequence. Consider kata word and vital. Is there any sequence, or ikto compare with vekata? Or sometimes the sequence is like at the same pace, or one is before the other?
Oh, wow. That is a very, very, very complicated question. So it does depend, obviously, depending on what the story is trying to tell us, we're going to get different verbs. But as far as a sequence goes, it is terribly important to mind what the sequence of the verbs is. So, like, if we start with a yiktol that kind of puts us into the future, if that's what shows up first, but then after that comes a katal, well, wait a second, we're already in the future. how can you have a completed action while we're sitting here in the future because we just had a yiktol verb? Well, that would be in the future looking back and saying, oh, this will have already been completed by the time the yiktol verb is done. It's so important. So katal can represent what's called a future perfect action. What if you get a katal followed by a katal? Well, then that's going to put you in past of a past, which in English is called the past perfect. I had done something would be the correct translation. Suppose, the example that you all are probably familiar with is from the story of Naomi and Ruth. Naomi went back to Israel from Moab because she had heard that God had attended to his people. So you're getting this. It actually starts off with a vayiktol, and then she went back. Why did she go back? Because she had heard, katal, that God had attended his people. Completed action. One thing I would like to mention, though, that's terribly important is that vekatal and vayiktols always start a sentence or a clause. So anytime you see a vayiktol or a vekatal, pause a little just before it because it's as if you just hit a comma or a period before continuing to that verb right there. Katals and yiktols, they can show up anywhere in the sentence, in the verse, in the clause. But vayiktols and vekatals always come first. Paulina, do you have a follow-up question?
Just in terms this four tense, is there any sequence have to follow, or it all depends on context? If they all appear together, like for instance, three appear together, is there any sequence or not?
Yeah. Okay. So the way that I often teach this to my students is to imagine almost like an arrow jumping forward and back. How can I say this? Whenever you see a yiktol, it's telling you it's incompleted. So you're pointing, your mind is pointing forward in time, anticipating when it will be completed at some point in the future. Whereas katal is a completed action, so it points your mind into, to the, I don't want to say into the past, but into the past relative to whatever came before it, to see when it was completed. Oh, you know what? This is a good time for me to mention something. English, and in fact, most languages use what is called an absolute, there we go, absolute tense system. That is to say, every verb that we say in English tells us when it happens, either relative to right now, whether it's in the past, whether it's right now, whether it's in the future, whether it's a past of a past, whether it's a past of a future, all the options that there are, all the dozen different tenses in English, they're all relative to the present tense. Hebrew is not like this. It is what's called a relative tense system. So hence the arrows. Okay, we're going to be determining the meaning of the next verb based on the previous verb, the one we just read. The only one that doesn't necessarily do that will be your vayiktol. It's always going to be your narrative past. And then this is what happened next in the story. All right, with that in mind, if we get a yiktol, I wonder if I should probably use two different colors here. Watch this. And I'll use green for yiktol and orange for katal. Okay, so suppose we're telling a story. We start off with a vayiktol telling us a story that actually does put us into the past. because vayiktol and katal, they're both completed actions. So what happened next in the story? This thing right here, let's call it A. And as we continue to read in the story, the next verb that shows up is a katal. So from that point, we can jump to the left again to envision when that second verb, that katal verb, would have been completed. Well, wait a second. If here we are now in the present tense, and we went back to the we went because of the vayiktol back in time, and then the katal takes us even further back in time. The phenomenon of a past is something you can define in English as the past perfect. So we're going to use the tools that English has, like the past perfect, to capture this concept. He had done something. That katal verb would be he had done something. She had done something. If we get a yiktol, that would basically jump us into the future. And if we got another yiktol, well, then that would continue to jump us into the future. Well, there is no future of a future in English, so we'll just use future. But there is a future of a future in Hebrew. What if we get a yiktol verb followed by a katal verb? Well, then you have to ask a question. When I jump backwards in time from this point, how far back do I jump? Because if I'm only going back a little bit, here we are in the present right there. We're jumping forward in time to some action that hasn't been completed yet, but from there jumping back because of a katal. Well, English uses the future perfect for that. However, if that arrow is jumping all the way back over here into time, and now it's in the past of the present, well, that's something different in English. You have to look at the context to be able to understand how to translate it well into English. This would just be a standard past tense. But the one, if it only jumps a little bit backwards, would be a completely different English tense. It would be your your future perfect. It's very tricky because it's relative to the last thing that was said. You have to read the cues to know how far back or forward you're jumping. Most of the time in Hebrew, it's not going to be terribly complicated. Usually you can pick up the cues and understand where you are in time. But I just want to really highlight that we do not have an absolute tense system in Hebrew. It's relative to the last thing that was said. Okay, that was a touch complex. Hopefully somebody was able to get something good out of that. Any follow-up questions before we move on? All right, would someone like to read this verse?
I can read.
Paulina, go ahead.
ואתה תדבר אל כל חכמי לב אשר
Yeah,
heave.
that's a tav right there. Tiv. This is your tav. Miletiv. Keep going.
Miletiv. Rucha. Sorry. I think it's ta, right? Sorry. Tahmar.
This is your tav over here, and this is your chet right there. The tav is going to have a toe on it, and chet will not. So this is not a tet. It's not a tav. It's a chet.
Chachma ve'ashu et bigdei Aharon lekadesho lecha lecha he no li.
Good. Lechahano. So it's what happens is when people learn a new language, they tend to what is it called? Overcompensate. Like this ch right here is very difficult, that ch sound. And then you want to transfer it over to the next letter, even though that's a H sound. Lechahano. Lechahano. All right, let me read through. Do you want me to point out a couple of things, Paulina, or should I read through it first? Tell you what, let me read through it first, and then we'll go back over it. Ve'ata tedaber el kol chachmei lev asher miletiv ruach chochma ve'asu et bigdei Aharon lekadesho lechahano li. And we already talked about the tav. This guy right here is what's called a furtive patach. Usually in Hebrew, when we see a vowel, we pronounce it after the consonant. This is only one of two exceptions. A patach at the end of the word with either a chet or an ayin or a hey, a consonantal hey, is going to have an ah sound preceding it because those letters are historically hard to pronounce. So it's ruach. You're getting your mouth into the right position to pronounce that sound. And let's see, shavua, that would be an example with an ayin at the end. Shavua. So the patach here is just preceding the ayin, and then here maybe the word gavoah. Gavoah. And will we always get one of these furtive patachs? No. Only if the preceding vowel is something other than an ah sound. Here's an example. Gavah. The preceding vowel is an ah sound, so you don't need a furtive patach there. Your mouth is already in the right position, ready to pronounce that guttural. And here's another example. Sava. Oops, there we go. Sava, same thing. Now here, there was a sneaky kamatz katan. This is our short vowel O that looks identical to the long vowel ah. The only way we can know when there's a kamatz katan O instead of a long vowel ah is if we have a closed syllable that is unstressed. Just like up here, you pronounced it correctly, closed syllable that's unstressed. You know, like this whole thing is treated like this whole thing is treated like a single word because of those hyphens, those makaf symbols. Closed unstressed, closed unstressed. And then over here, seen instead of sheen, no big deal. Ve'ata tedaber. Do I want to talk about that? No. So, and you, tedaber, Tav says you are the subject. Ata also says you are the subject. Is it necessary in Hebrew to mention the subject if it's already built into the verb? No need to. So then why would someone include it if it's not necessary? Maybe for emphasis. And you and not another shall speak unto all of the wise ones of heart. The heart. In the ancient Near East, what does the heart mean? What is it a symbol for? In our modern culture, we usually think of the heart as being love, or the place where your emotions emanate from. Not in the ancient Near East. What is your lev? What is your heart? It's the place of your intellect, of your imagination, of your contemplations. It's your thoughts. So the whys of thought, okay. So it's not like they were emotionally intelligent. They were intelligent. Asher gives us more information about those whys of heart. Asher miletiv ruach chochma. All of this is a subordinate clause. It's a relative clause. It depends on the thing that was said before and gives us more information and acts like a giant adjective. Miletiv has several parts to it. The vav at the end is a pronominal suffix. The t is our katal suffix, and mile is a verb. T says, I did it. What did I do? Mile. Well, male is to be full, a stative verb, but in the PL, it is making something full. So I have filled. What pronominal suffix has a vav? Him.
Him.
Now, is the him referring back to some one individual person, or is it filling the heart? It's singular. Maybe it's filling the heart. With what? Ruach chokhmah. A wind, breath, or spirit of wisdom. Same root as chachameh. The wise ones have a spirit of chokhmah, wisdom. Ve'asu. Now, u is our katal suffix. They did or made. The root is ein sin yod, missing yod. There's that vav. Does this vav just mean and? Based on the context, this verb hasn't happened yet. So we're going to translate this as a vekatal, something that is yet to happen. That they will or shall make. Et, make what? There's our direct object marker. Bigdei Aharon, the garments of. Tzereyod tells us that it's plural and that it's a construct chain. The garments of Aharon, of Aaron. Likadesho. Now this is an infinitive construct verb with an o suffix, pronominal suffix. Him, it, 3ms. So to, what is the root? Kuf dalet shin? To be holy.
Kadosh.
To be sanctified. So that's a state of being verb, but it's put into the PL. Just like earlier, malay is full, mile is to fill. So also, kadesh is to be is the state of being verb to be holy, and lekado or lekadesh in the PL makes it it's making something holy, to sanctify him. Lechahano. This is essentially another example of this over here. And if you all know what I'm talking about, this is a PL verb, lekadesh. This is also a PL verb, lemale. This is also a PL verb, lechahen. And this is also a PL verb, ledaber. They all have the same pattern. So this is also an infinitive construct. To priest? Well, no, it's the verb kaf he nun means to minister. It's just that a Kohen is one who is ministering, usually translated as a priest. But literally it comes from minister. And in fact, I believe there are a couple places in the Bible where we see, there's one place in the Bible where David's sons are called Kohanim. Well, wait a second. Kohanim are from the tribe of Levi. How can David's sons be Kohanim? Easy. The verb kohen or lechahen is to minister. So officials in the government that are ministering, something like that's perfectly fine. They're just not Levitical priests. To minister him, whatever that him right there is, right? Unto me, li. Wonder what the O right there is. Can anyone figure it out? To no, it's not a participle. It's not a kohen. It's not a priest. Lechahano, to minister him or it.
Infinitive.
What's that?
Infinitive?
Well, yeah, the first part is an infinitive, lechahen. I'm wondering about the O at the end, that 3MSO on the end.
Suffix. Yes.
Yeah.
Third person, yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
And,
in fact, you don't get to see anything really in the translation.
And this verb you can use in the politic too, to minister.
Yeah, yeah, you can. Lecha. Of course, if I spell it right, that would help. Lechahen. There should be a doubling dagesh in the middle, just as there is in tidaber and mileh, but you can't put a dagesh in a hey, so it forgoes it. Lechahen, to minister or organize or be in charge of. Abdelaziz, would you like to read the next verse?
Okay.
Go ahead.
ואלה הבגדים אשר יעשו חושן ואיפוד ומעיל וכתונת תשבץ מצנפת ואבנת ועשו בגדי קודש לאהרון אחיך ולבניו לכהנו לי.
Good. Lechahanoli. All right, so here instead of an E, it's an A sound. Vigde, and over here the cantillation mark makes it look like a tsere, but it's actually a chirik, achicha. And then here there's an U. I think you said ve, but over here you said U correctly. So probably just fine. I'll read through it one time. Ve'ele ha-begadim asher ya'asu choshen ve'efod u'me'il וכתונת, תשבץ, מצנפת ואבנת, ועשו בגדי קודש לאהרון אחיך ולבניו לכהנו לי. All right, now I'll be the first one to say this isn't a terribly exciting verse for me because it's just describing all of the elements of clothing for the high priest. So we've got a lot of vocabulary here that shows up relatively infrequently in the Bible, or at least in very particular places in the Bible that you don't get to use on a regular basis. The choshen, the ephod. We get to hear a lot about the ephod, maybe. Ma'il, in modern Hebrew, ma'il is a jacket, a coat.
Yes.
Ketonet is the same tunic, maybe, that Joseph received from his father. So this is some sort of a tunic. Tashbetz, mitznefet, ve'avnet. Yeah. All right, so ve'ele habegadim, these are the garments. There's an implied R right here because Hebrew doesn't have is or R. And here is extra information about those begadim. Asher ya'asu, which they will or they shall make. There's our list, our laundry list of articles. That's kind of funny. Ve'asu, ve'katal, and they shall do or make. Vigde kodesh, the garments of holiness. Here, the translator decided to describe kodesh as an adjective, which sounds good in English, but kodesh, that o-e pattern, makes it a noun. Like boker or rochav or any of those o-e words, they're nouns. So garments of holiness. Le'aharon, now this could be to, for, or directed towards, or belonging to. Here it's probably intended for or belonging to Aaron. Achicha, your brother. Ulevanav, and to his. Here we get to see the yod of the plural. Sons, that yod tells us that we're looking at a plural. Lechahanoli, that he may minister. Oh, for his ministry. Of course, now I get it. This is the act of ministering that belongs to Aaron for his ministering unto me. Got it. For the question from the last verse, finally figured it out. Lechahen, the infinitive construct is grammatically a noun. It is a noun describing the action of the verb. So you can say it belongs to him or anyone else. Here it belongs to him, Aaron, his act of ministering unto me. Okay, any comments or questions before we move on?
Rabbi Peterman say today that we must pronounce the constructions as one word. You do that too. You say big day Kodesh. You pronounce it in a row when you
Yes.
read. Is that correct?
Oh yes, absolutely. Think
I
of
must learn that.
yeah, it's gosh, I can't come up with a good example in English yet, but the okay, let's try this. Do you say desktop computer or do you say desktop computer? The idea is that when you have words that belong together in order to make some bigger idea, you kind of rush through the first words and then put the emphasis on the last one. I'm looking at my desktop computer. We do that in English or in our own language all the time. And so the same thing is going on in Hebrew. Vigde kodesh, as if it were one word.
Okay, we must learn it.
Yeah. All right. That's I think that's the only one, but in the previous verse there was a really long
Yeah, more. Yes.
Jesse, would you like to read?
Okay. Vehem yikhu et hazahav ve'et hat chalet ve'et ha'argaman ve'et tolaat ha'shani ve'et ha'shesh.
Okay, so there you got to get a whole bunch of vocabulary on the materials that make these textiles. Vehem yikhu et hazahav ve'et ha'techelet, ve'et ha'argaman, ve'et tola'at hashani, ve'et hashesh. So here we only have one construct chain right there. And in fact, because of this hyphen, you're going to read the whole thing as one word. Stop it. Hashani. I almost said sheni. That's the second. Hashani. And then that's going to be one word, or as it were, one word. Ve'et hashesh. Good. Vehem yikhu, and they, yiktol, shall lakach, take, et hazahav, the gold. Now, why gold? Is that going to be put into the garments? Of course. Yeah, you make it real, you turn it into a really fine thread, and then you can interweave it in just like all these other threads. Techelet is a certain kind of color. You can either get it, I think I might have mentioned this before, you can either get it from the indigo plant if you're poor, or you can get it from a certain sea snail if you're rich. Argaman probably comes from the same sea snail. It's just that if you don't expose it to sunlight, it stays purple, and if you do, it turns into techelet. Tola'at hashani is some sort of a silkworm that produces a red-colored thread, and then shesh is fine linen, which comes from the flax plant. Thomas, do you want to read this one?
Okay. ועשו את האפוד, את האפוד, זהב, תכלת וארגמן, תולעת שני ושש משזר, מעזה, חושב.
The sneaky kamatz katan.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Syllable
yes,
as
there's the
first.
cancellation mark, yes. Mosh zar.
Good, moshzar. ועשו את האפוד, זהב, תכלת וארגמן, תולעת שני ושש מושזר. מעשה חושב. Talk about that in a second. First, this one right here, moshzar. Does anyone here know what kind of a word this is, moshzar? What you're going to be looking at is the mem and that kamatz katan to help you figure it out. And in fact, this kamatz is also a good indicator. The mem tells us that we're either looking at a noun or a participle. This is a participle.
Yeah.
Now, a participle is usually translated. Participle. A participle is usually translated as ing, doing, running, jumping. And this kamatz katan right here tells us what category, what binyan of a verb this is coming from. What verb has an o or u vowel before the first root letter? Well, it comes from the binyan huf al. Remember, if the pei, ayin, lamed represent your three root letters, the u is coming before it. Here, the u or o vowel, they're basically the same family of vowels, is coming before, so it's hufal. What is hufal? Well, it's causative. It is causative, but it's also passive. Earlier, we saw he feel, which is causative, but active, like he is causing something. But here it's passive. Something was caused. Who caused it? I don't know. Hufal doesn't care who caused it. It's just telling us that it was caused. So the root has to do with interweaving. So we're going to say all of these things, the zahav, the techelet, Ha'argaman, Tolat Shani, Veshesh. It's like all of it was moshzal, caused to be intertwined. Ma'aseh choshev. What is the root or the verb chashav? Lachashov. Hint, you're doing it right now.
Hashav.
Yeah. Chashav in modern Hebrew means to think. But it comes from this idea of applying your intellect and using your skill and thinking about what you're doing. So here they translate it as skillfully, even though I would disagree with that. This is also a participle. It does not have a mem at the front. Only five of the 7 binyanim have a mem at the front. The kal binyan and the nifal do not. This is a kal binyan. This is a simple action. Well, chashav. I'm thinking simple action. But the pattern tells us that it's a participle, a masculine singular participle.
Yeah.
Well, so how do we make an ing translation out of this? Well, a choshev is someone who is being skillful. So one who is doing something skillfully would be an artisan, a craftsman, someone who is being skillful. Here, ma'aseh is a noun related to the root asa, to do. So it's the doing or the work of an artisan. It bugs, in case you haven't noticed yet, it bugs me just a little bit when the translation will take one kind of word like a noun and turn it into a different kind of word like an adverb. It's like, well, that's not really what it's saying. So as long as we're reading in translation, we'll have to rely on that translator to do our thinking for us, our hashiva. Let's see. Who is up next? Paulina, would you like to read?
Yes.
All right.
Shater,
Mm-hmm.
Heterfold,
Mm-hmm.
Hovrot, Adonai, Lo.
Almost.
Mm-hmm.
This is not Yod He Vav He, it's Yod He Yod He. Good.
Yeah.
My apologies. I mean to say that it's not Yod He Vav He Adonai, but rather that it's spelled differently. Could you read it?
Yeah.
Very good.
Lo, El, Shane, Ketzo, Tav, Vehuba.
Very good. Shtei, or actually it's technically an audible shva, shtei, but nobody in Israel says that. Shtei is way easier to say. Shtei chetefot hoverot yihye lo el shnei ktsotav vechubar. Excellent. Shtei is from the number shtayim, but it's in construct form. The two of. Ktafayim are your shoulders. So here, ktefot, it's the pieces related to the shoulders, the shoulder pieces. Choverot. In Hebrew, your friend is your chaver. You have chaverim, friends, and it has to do with the idea of being joined together. You hang out with your chaverim, your friends. Well, that's the idea of join. So these shoulder pieces are choverot, being joined. Participle. Choverot. Yihyelo, it shall be to it, or him, el shnei ketzotav, to the two, ketzotav, ketz is an edge. In modern Hebrew, kitzoni is an extremist, someone on the edge. It's the same root, ketz. So here, ketzotav are the edges of it. The vav at the end is a pronominal suffix. Vechubar, this is a vekatal vav, so some sort of an incompleted action. Chubar has an u-ah pattern. What binyan is it? Yeah, u-ah. Wait, did you say
No.
hufal?
No, pu'al.
Pu'al. And we know it because the u is coming under the first root letter instead of coming before the first root letter. Pu'al. So this is going to be essentially a PL intensive action, but in the passive. So he will be chaver joined together.
Yeah.
Let's see. Abdelaziz, would you like to read this one? Are you there?
I can read.
Ah, wait a second.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
וחשב עבודתו אשר עליו כמעשיהו ממנו יהי זהב תכלת וארגמן ותולעת שני ושיש משזר.
So exactly, there it is again. Kamatz katan, moshzav. Very good. I really like your accent. Just want to let you know. Vecheshev afudato asher alav kmaasehu mimenu yihye zahav tchelet ve'argaman v'tola'at shani v'shesh moshzar. All right, this feels a lot like a repeat of what we read earlier. I guess this right here. I think all of this is kind of new, but this list of threads, that's kind of a repeat from earlier. Cheshev. What's the root?
Peshav.
So it's the same
Yeah.
thing we saw earlier. Oshev is an artisan, someone skillful, but now we're getting the pattern. Same pattern as sefer.
Sefer, yeah.
It's a penultimate segalit. It's a noun. So the root has to do with skillful, but it's a noun related to that root. How do we translate that? Well, here they translate it as a band. A cheshev is a skillfully woven article, a band. Afudato, this is referring to the ephod, skillfully woven band of the ephod. And then more information about it. Asher alav kama'asehu. Hang on a second. Miss sehu mimenu. Okay, so that means this right here is the end of it. Asher alav. Wait a second. No, right here is Asher alav, which is on it. That's describing this, because this is 3ms and this is 3ms. There's your reference back to the antecedent. Kama'asehu, like the work of him or it, mimenu, from it, yeh, it shall be. Well, basically, let's invert everything here and it'll make a lot more sense. It shall be from the same material according to what that was made out of. Okay, so that's Zahav, Techelet, Argaman, Tolad, Shani, Shesh, Moshzal. There's that hufal verb again, participle that is finely twined. Eileen, would you like to read? Aileen. Is it Aileen or Eileen? Eileen.
I
Eileen.
pas les po- pas et
Mhm. ולקחת את
sin ta
This is shte, shte.
te
Mhm. Avne,
av
right? Avne. And then here you get a shin dot on the right and a cholam on the left. Shoham.
so
Mhm. The first one is u, fitachta. Go ahead. U fitachta.
teta
Mhm.
Ach, ach.
ah no
That's right. Ale.
a away ha men
Close. Give me an eh sound right here. Hem.
him
Alehem.
alehem so me root
This is your vowel for the mem. Shemot.
shamar
No, it's an O sound, like right here. Shemot. Shemot.
shema shema
That's right.
ben
Close, but there's a yod at the end. B'nai.
b'nai
Mm-hmm.
b'nai Yisrael
Good. Yisrael.
la
All right, let me read through one time. Velakachta et shtei avnei shoham ufitachta alehem, alehem shemot b'nei Yisrael. What do these two verbs have in common? Anybody's able to answer? What do those two words have in common?
Second person, masculine.
They're both verbs. They are both second masculine singular, meaning you, a man, are the ones they're the subject.
Vekatal.
Good. They are both vekatal. So some sort of incompleted action. That probably sums up most of the relevant similarities. We could say they both end in chet, but that's not relevant. Where's the stress on these vekatals?
At the end.
They are all ultimate, they are both into ultimate stress.
Mhm.
And that's because it is a vegetal that is 2ms. There are two conjugations that get ultimate instead of penultimate stress. One is you, a man, did it. The other one is I did it.
Mhm.
Velakachta, you shall take. How do you say, and I shall take?
T.
Velakachti.
Yeah.
Without the vav on there, it should be lakachti or lakachta. That's usually where the stress goes. But because it's a vegetal in one of those two conjugations, the stress moves to the end. Velakachta. What does this represent? A little backwards L. Beats me. Secondary stress. Velakachta. It's almost like you can hear the volume going velakachta. Like this. That's secondary stress. We have a lot of words with secondary stress. Well, I don't want to use that one. Well, it's the only one I can think of right now. So intimidate, right? The tim is secondary stress and the date is the primary stress. Intimidate. Oh, I got it backwards, didn't I? Okay, sorry, I got it backwards. But anyway, the point is there's secondary stress in English, there's secondary stress in Hebrew. Usually the secondary stress is marked with a little vertical line called a meteg. Looks like this one right here, but that's actually something separate. Here, we get something else doing the same job, secondary stress. Good. Velakachta, and you shall take, et shtei avnei shoham. Is the shva before a dagesh silent or audible? See, it's a lousy question because most of the time the answer should be a shva that precedes a dagesh is silent.
Yeah.
And in fact, we can be certain that chet does not like to take audible shva. It'll take a reduced vowel. The only time it can take shva is if it's a silent shva. But look at this. Now we have a problem because if we come up with this rule that says anytime you see a shva coming before a dagesh, it's silent. Well, we have another rule that says shva at the beginning of a word is audible. Conflicting rules. What do we do? Does anyone know the masculine form of the number 2?
Shnei.
Right. The full form would be shnayim, and the construct form is shnei. Why is assuming that this is an audible shva, that means this is a strong dagesh in the tav. What letter is missing?
Nun.
Nun. So shnayim is masculine. The feminine form will have an inserted tav, shintayim, like this. But the nun at the end of the syllable assimilates. So you get a strong dagesh, missing nun, and this drops to a shva instead of what should have been a chirik. Should have been shita or shite, but it turned into shtei because it's easier to say. Yeah. All right. So et shtei avnei shoham. Shoham is a particular kind of stone. Avnei, masculine or feminine? I'm probably asking because it's regular.
It's irregular.
Exactly. It looks masculine with that tzere yod, but if I'm asking, it's probably because it's irregular. So it's feminine. Even is the singular form. Irregular, feminine. And avanim is the plural, also irregular. Most of your irregular nouns will only be irregular in the plural. But there is a collection of nouns that is irregular in the singular. And it's rather rare that you're going to get something that's irregular in both the singular and the plural. Evan is one of them.
Okay. And the
Well,
Evan is plural and feminine.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Avnei is feminine plural, stones of Shoham.
Yeah. That's the
Um,
reason.
what's the root of this word? Ufitachta.
Patach,
What does it mean?
open.
To open
Right. Well,
and
patach
to
means to open.
engrave.
Open is in the Kalbinyan. Here it's in the PL. So it's something a little bit more intensive or aggressive. You're opening up that stone just a little bit and you're engraving alehem, upon them. What's this yod doing in here? Alehem. We know the word al. We know the suffix hem. So what's the yod for?
Normally is Allah, it's he.
Yes,
And
well,
now we have the
missing
yod.
yod. Exactly. So it comes from the same root as Allah, to go up, to ascend. So the yod of the root appears when there's a pronominal suffix. What book of the Bible is called Shemot?
Exodus.
The one we're reading from. Absolutely. The names of the children of Israel, or the sons of Israel. All right. It is no, I think it's game night, family game night for me. My wife wants me to head back to the head over to for game night, so I got to go. Keep up the good work, everyone. Thank you for joining. I hope you learned something today. If you want to support, here's how you can do it. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Lehitraot v'shalom.
Later.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.